them feel energized, that makes them feel good, and that's good. And then if somebody does, some people love the poetry of the music, and I try to hold on to both. If you don't care about the lyrics, that's fine. But if you do, I'd like to give you a message worth listening to, as opposed to do drugs or have sex. Why not? Some way to improve your life.
More music variety on Power 8 Radio.
Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to another special episode of PAR Meet the Artist. And today I have a super special guest. If I get you to please introduce yourself, tell us what you do. You're an artist, or tell us what you do. Tell us where you're from as well, please.
I'm Mark Friday. I'm a guitarist and vocalist for Friday Dies, and I write and perform music. And I am working on a full-length CD, which would be 12 songs, and I just released the single "Hammer Down" not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago.
It's great. I like it kind of where you left it there on Hammer Down, because that's the first track that I have heard, and the energy on it is absolutely incredible. So I was reading a little bit about the story behind sort of you coming back. So first let's go back to the beginning. So how long have you been doing music for?
Decades. I don't know, 30, 40 years, a long time. I've been playing in bands probably for 30 years or so, but then I stopped playing for a while and came back, and this is what I'm coming back with.
Super. That's great. And the coming back, so I kind of read somewhere, maybe it's fictional, but that you've been obviously doing music for a while. Then your son found a CD, and then that kind of propelled it. So could you give us
Correct.
a bit more?
He found a CD, and I thought, well, this isn't so bad. and I started to play again. I didn't even know if I could play again, so I started practicing every day, and I got better, and I was able to play again. So I thought I should do this. I almost felt guilty not producing more music during my life, but I feel like I lost some. Like there was music that I wrote in my head that I never got out onto a recording or even wrote it down on paper. And so that stuff is lost, but I began writing again, and this stuff is hopefully not so lost, and hopefully people listen to it and enjoy it.
I think people will definitely listen to it, because so on this track Hammer Down, you talk about kind of like unity even in the world as it's so diverse, and being able to believe in yourself and surround yourself with
even though things go bad around you and things fall apart, you still can stick together with who's left and move ahead.
That is really, really a great message to give out to people. For me, obviously the track itself is very rocky and like very heavy. And usually you don't get messages out of tracks like that. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I just can't hear it. But with yours,
there's a lot of negative connotations with the heavy music for sure. I try not to do. I try to keep positive. I always try to show a positive light in everything, even if it's a sounds negative. I think that's what I'm trying to say. But you're right. The heavy metal music a lot of times it can be a negative message, but I try not to do any of that. All of my messages I would like to think are powerful and more empowering. I would rather see people stand up, say what they believe, and speak honestly as opposed to anything negative.
That is really, really cool. Because you can definitely tell from that. When I started listening to it, I'm like, And then, when your lyrics came through, you really can't hear them. You pay attention rather than, it's not clouded by so much of heaviness in terms of instrumental or the shouting and, which is all part of the music. But with yours, I could actually get a message out of it, which is really, really, that's one of the reasons I'm like, yeah, no, definitely. We should definitely do this interview.
Well, that's good. Some people don't even listen to the lyrics, and that's fine. They just like the music. They like the way it feels. It makes them feel energized. It makes them feel good, and that's good. And then if somebody does, some people love the poetry of the music, and I try to hold on to both. If you don't care about the lyrics, that's fine. But if you do, I'd like to give you a message worth listening to, as opposed to do drugs or have sex. Why not? Why not? Some way to improve your life in some way.
That's really, really cool. And let's kind of go back a little bit. So you've been doing music and then you decided to give it up. Did you lose drive for it, or?
I think I lost a little bit of strive for it. I didn't quite have the drive, and then I had kids. And so I went to work to make sure that they had food to eat and a place to live. And then as my kids are growing up, and I've sort of rekindled my love for music, which never really went away. I just didn't have the time to practice and play it and get together with other people and perform and that kind of stuff, because I was busy with everything else. And strangely, my kid got into a lot of the heavier stuff, and he began looking. So because you can't just go to the store and stuff, so he would search online for heavy bands, and he ran across me, which I found funny, after he had found my CDs in the closet. So that must have been weird. You go searching for a type of music and you find your parents. I don't know if that was embarrassing or cool, but that's what he did.
Oh, I'm sure it was really, really cool. I would be like, I'm blown away, because you get to. So, based on, it would be a question that I would like to ask him, really, to say, compared to, but you can answer it as well. Compared to those music back then, when you were making music and and now you're coming back into the music scene, do you think there's been a big shift between them?
I don't think a lot has changed. I think there's a lot more restrictions on today's music. A lot of these kids are going back and they're listening to the old stuff, and they're liking it more than they would the newer stuff. And I think it was because back then in the 80s and 90s, we didn't really have the restrictions of today. And I'm not sure exactly what those restrictions are, but they were definitely freer to express themselves. And the kids resonate with the freedom of expression for sure. And so they go back and they would rather listen to music that came out 20, 30 years before some of them were even born, and as opposed to stuff that came out with their own generation. I found that a little unique among them for sure. We would listen to music that was older than us too, but we also listened to stuff that came out when we were in our teenagers. And that was the stuff we primarily listened to, where these kids are going back and listening to stuff that was written before they were even born. And that's their primary music. And I think it was because those people had a freedom to express themselves more so than they do today. And you would think there would be more expression today because of more exposure through internet and stuff like that. But there's actually less. There's less, I don't know if it's done politically or if it's done on their own. I don't know if it's like a peer pressure thing where everybody's so afraid of what somebody else is going to think of them. I'm not sure where exactly the pressure is to hold off your expression when we all have different expressions, and we should be free to express them.
Absolutely, I feel that. Because like initially when you started, I'm like, oh, but there's a lot more, you can get your music out there. There's a lot more new music. But I think maybe, a lot of it now is just, it's a lot of noise. So they would just actually, as you said, the restriction in terms of, okay, this is how many minutes it has to be. These are the things you definitely can't say, being politically correct and all this, compared to back in those days where, there's
We
no.
didn't have political correctness, and oddly, we had less racism and less a lot of things. But it's almost like the more political correctness you get, the more you have that stuff. Instead of just allowing people to talk to each other, I think they get along a lot better than if politicians talk for them, because they'll
Mm,
never speak from the hearts of the people. They'll always speak from the power they receive
mm,
from the
mm.
conflict.
Yeah, it's all about that, the fitting into that bubble. Otherwise, then you get sort of targeted. Oh yeah, you did this or you said that. There's so much sort of speech police around. So freedom of speech is not quite free as it used to be
Yeah,
back then. So in music, no, I can definitely understand where your answer came from. Thank you so much for that. And so another bit that got me. So your surname is Friday, right?
yes.
So Friday Dice, is that a heavy metal thing, or is that a metaphor for something, or
It
why?
no, it was nobody's ever asked this, to be honest with you. Nobody's ever asked. Um, there was a guy that used to bully me when I was probably 14, 15, somewhere like that. But he was a big guy. I'm 5'7". He was like 6 foot, and he was big, and he was gonna beat me up. But I couldn't beat him up, but I could run. So whenever he came around, I just ran from him, and somehow it got around that he was upset because he couldn't catch me, and so he would try to find me and follow me, and basically he was bullying me. So one day I took a can of spray paint and I scribbled Friday Dies in the alley behind my house, and everybody had assumed that he did it. And for me, it was just a joke. I was just making a joke about the whole thing. And then other kids in the neighborhood would start to write Friday Dies around the neighborhood. And he took credit for everything, of course. But then later on, when I got into a band, that band broke up, and then I reformed another band, which is the old CD that came out in the 80s. And we were trying to figure out, what can we call this band? And and the drummer suggested that we call it Friday Dies because everybody in the neighborhood had heard of Friday Dies because they scribbled it on everything. And and so that's where it came from. It had nothing to do with anybody dying or anything. It was just because somebody bullied me and I was making a joke out of it, and it became a neighborhood graffiti is what it became, kind of like Kilroy would have been in I think it was World War II. Um, so that's really all it was. And the only reason we picked it is because we couldn't come up with a name unique enough that somebody didn't already have it. And the only reason we picked it was because it was unique, and I've never heard anything like it since in the decades. And I find it strange that nobody's ever asked. You're
No,
the first person
absolutely. Well,
that's ever asked where that came from, but it was really just a bunch of teenagers making a joke.
hmm.
Um,
And it's there's definitely a lesson to be learned from that. You went through this, and you thought, oh, you know what? I just turn in for a joke, and then so I suppose from the bullying brought Friday Dies, which is why we're here today. So
yeah.
sometimes things do happen for a reason.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, they do. And I kind of use it as a metaphor, sort of as like, um, we did eventually, by the way, become friends. Eventually, we became friends, but that's another story. But I do use the whole Friday die as a metaphor of kind of like the phoenix. Like sometimes you do stuff and then you have to rethink, like it didn't work, nothing worked, it all fell apart, and so you have to rethink and reinvent yourself. And
Mm,
I that's why I use the phoenix, who grows into an adulthood, dies, and then becomes an egg again and relives and is reborn. And we do this many times with our own lives. We try stuff, and it fails, so we kill everything that we tried that didn't work, and we try it again and reinvent ourselves, and hopefully that succeeds. I find that failure is the greatest teacher, and if if you didn't fail, you didn't try hard enough. Then you need to try something harder.
No, I like that. I really like that. I really like that because at the end of the day, if you never tried, you never know whether you succeed or not. But I like that bit as well, where you said you try it, you fail, but you try again. You reinvent it. They say only a fool does the same thing over and over again and expect a different reaction.
Right.
So you got to tweak little bits and pieces, but the bottom line is don't give up. As long as you keep evolving, you get somewhere. So that's really, really positive. Thank you so much for the answer. And I just want to go into, so you're writing this album. So it's going to be called The Sky is the Ocean?
Correct.
Again, the sky is the ocean. I thought about that. I'm like, that's pretty deep.
Yeah, I don't know that.
So
I don't quite have the words to explain exactly how that's going to go, but it will be. It'll be part of the songs for sure. It'll be in the songs. But if I suppose if you're kind of like, if you are familiar at all with like flat Earth models, where we have a flat Earth and then a dome above us, and above that dome would be more water, and below us would also be more water. But that gets into a whole. We're getting really deep into the weeds. We could be here for hours discussing that one. But that's where that stems from, anyways.
Well, so we'll get more insight into this in the album.
For sure.
When are we expecting this full album to be out? No rush, but
by August at the latest. It's mostly done now. I think by August the whole thing will be out, and it will be well written for sure, and the lyrics will be different than the other albums, and hopefully all very positive tracks, nothing negative.
Perfect. That's what we like to hear. And so Hammer Down is like the trendsetter for the rest of what we're to expect. So are we expecting all the other tracks to be in the same form as Hammer Down, some mellow?
There'll be many. Yeah, there'll be many different ones. I like a lot of forms of metal and jazz and classical, so that's all going to be on there. There's going to be a female voice on there as well, so it's going to be a lot different. It'll be a lot different than the previous stuff that I've done for sure. I'll touch on jazz, classical, and every form of metal imaginable.
I like that because I said there is a fusion in there, different types of it. So
lots of fusion,
that would be really, really cool because that's what we like here on Power Ace Radio. And kind of going on from that, because you said about this female voice and that, and I'm like, what people must be screaming right now, where can we find you? Where what social platforms are you on? Do you have a website? Or
just about anything, really. If you just typed in Friday Dies Band, you'll come up with all kinds of stuff. There's plenty of articles, and I have music on Spotify and iTunes and YouTube and whatever. I'm not hard to find. So it's everywhere. There's a website, but most people, I think, will find the music on Spotify. I think is probably the most used platform, and maybe YouTube, but it's there everywhere. Facebook.
Absolutely. So, thank you for that. We just want to kind of go into this next bit. So you're recording this album with is it TRAX 52 Studio?
Correct. A friend of mine, Paul, I forget his last name. I just know him as Paul, but it is an award-winning studio, and I cannot remember what he got a Grammy for, but he was the first, and he might be the only studio in Wisconsin with a Grammy. There maybe is one more, but I don't remember if there was, but he was for sure the first. And so we're recording there because I get along well with him. He's got great equipment, which is why the sound would probably be far more polished than the last couple things that I've done. Were recorded on 4 tracks, usually in somebody's basement or in a duplex or someplace wherever we could set up.
So with now going to such a a big studio with all this, are there any, I say, challenges, or maybe we should call them memorable moments while you're going through your recording?
I really enjoy it a lot better because I can take my time. I'm not constricted with, my mom gets off work at 3. And so we got to be done and get packed up and get out of here. So that part's different. I can just come, I can set my stuff up, I can play, and I can just leave my stuff right there. I can leave, I can come back 2 weeks later, and everything is there where I left it. And we don't have to move mics or reset up anything. We can just plug in and pick up right where we left off. So that part's nice. I enjoy that quite a bit.
That is really, really cool. Yeah, I'm glad you had a great time. Well, yeah, on the show, the show is ending. Time flies when you're having fun. So I just like to say thank you so much for coming on the show, blessing us with your presence. And until we meet again, it's been such a pleasure. And to you viewers out there, to catch up again soon on another episode of PAR Meet the Artist. Have a good one. Bye.
Power Ace Radio.